Welcome to the Games Freezer.
Okay, so this is Richard, and this is Games Freezer, and this is the 10-minute taster for Masquerada, Songs and Shadows. I came into this game not expecting to like it. I've got to admit, it's one of them games that I looked at, I thought, that looks kind of pretty, and then I read about it, and I thought, maybe not my type of thing. Not normally into the kind of fantasy type RPG games, but this has got something about it. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that I really like the artwork. I like the way it's been portrayed. I like the voice acting as well. It's really cool the way they bring across the story. There's just something about it. The aesthetic to the game is really cool. So we're going to jump in at the tutorial point. Now this is where you're taken through some story. You're just plunged straight in. You don't really know what's going on, but obviously it's going to introduce you to the attack system. So this auto attack, which is what you utilise to take on enemies. You got skills down below that are activated by the various buttons X, O, triangle and square. When you fill each of those boxes, you'll have the corresponding skill to be able to choose from. And then there's also this focus arc, so you'll be indicated on screen as to where a character or where yourself has defensive abilities, and where your vulnerable spots are and where your opposition's vulnerable spots are. So obviously behind someone's going to be the vulnerable spot, directly in front isn't going to be, so you're going to have to work a bit harder to kill them. The attacks are auto if you once you press R2 and keep hold of it, your character does continue to attack the opposing enemy character. You'll get to build a team. As you can see on the screen at the minute, it's kind of like a full posse that's going around this castle, or this fort, and we are just basically working our way through this story arc. And so tactical pulls here, L1, you can issue the commands and sort of organise your team a bit easier in the tactical pulls menu, and then once you release that, then your team go about their way and attack the characters that you've asked them to attack. And you have a cooling down period for any of your special skills that you use. So once you've used it, it will take a little bit of time to reheat up and be ready to go again. You can revive fallen companions during the combat. So your standard stuff, go up to them, press X, and away they go. They come back to life. Woohoo. So that's kind of pretty standard staple stuff. To be fair, the combat, it's so. I'm not really sold on it yet. I haven't played enough maybe to understand the full complexities of it or how it hangs together, but my first impressions are it doesn't feel quite visceral enough. It's maybe a bit, kind of bit light. It doesn't feel like you're involved. You're kind of a bit distant. But you know what? It's not what this game is about, to be fair. Yes, you'll be doing some attacking and some fights, and you've got some cool weapons obviously, but I don't think it's really about that. It's about this story. This storyline is what drew me into this game, and this is what I like about it. This is kind of like the prelude, the prologue even, of the actual story, and it draws you in. And then when you actually get started, you're introduced to a new character completely from this tutorial. I don't want to spoil it because I really like the start of the game and the way it drops you in there. And you are then thrust upon a boat, not for too long, and then you'll end up visiting a town and working your way through and kind of uncovering what your backstory is, what this prologue has to do with your story, and how that all hangs together. And that's the draw of this game. That's the one that's got me intrigued, and I didn't really think I would be. It's something that I didn't realise would really draw me in at all. So that's really cool. I mean, it's a good surprise for me. I hadn't heard much about this game previously, other than the sort of press releases. So it was a nice surprise to be drawn into something so cool. So yeah, so we're going now back through the corridors that we came up on, and we've got to go and head towards the marker. There's an exclamation marker that normally pops up once we get through these, that tells us where we need to go next. Here we go. So got a bit more storyline. So we're after Avestus. I mean, that's the other thing with this game. When I first sort of started getting involved with it, none of these names obviously really mean anything to me. So I was a bit scratching my head at first. Okay, who am I talking about? Who are these people? But as you go round and as you go through, we've got the standard kind of mechanic of picking up the codec information, and it will explain a lot of these conversations and also references that you hear from the non-player characters, your NPCs. They'll say things as you walk past, not directly to you. They'll be having conversations, and it might give you some information that could be pertinent. It might just be idle talk, but then you'll have that explained generally in a codec as to the references that they were making. So it's quite handy, and it's a good thing to work through. And I've been picking up those codecs and sort of delving into the wider story or the wider information base that they've got on here. So it's pretty cool, and that's what's got me involved with the storyline even more. I feel the codecs work really well, so I like that part of it. I like this isometric angle as well. I've always been a fan of isometric games, and this really works really well. Nothing feels too tough to negotiate. You know, sometimes you get a bit caught up in the angle and things feel fiddly to utilize or to get your angles right when you're trying to attack, but that really works pretty well, really. I mean, I've got to say the only down point I've found so far, as I say, is the combat just feels a bit airy-fairy, not visceral enough. Yeah, so I like Victor Vran at the minute. I've been playing a lot of that, and the combat in that, and it's an isometric game as well, combat in that feels very strong, and you feel like you're very powerful. And in this tutorial, you're playing with a powerful character, but it doesn't feel like that, because look, he's got the attacks built into his buttons down there at the bottom. You've got plenty of options, but it just doesn't really feel like you're that powerful. I don't know why I'm beating up a drummer. I'm not quite sure why I'm doing it. This is a bit of an odd moment. He's not really fighting back, just playing his drum. I'm assuming if he plays his drum, he's dealing magic to me. But yeah, that felt a bit harsh to beat the old boy up with the sticks. So we've now come to the next part of the tutorial, where we've made our way to the spire, which is an integral part of the storyline. And we've come across this character, Lucia Sharia. and I'm sure this character will show up in the main game, because this is pretty much the pinnacle of this tutorial, what it takes you through now, which kind of sets up your venture into the main game and your quest. One of the other things that I have found as well as a negative of the game when I've been walking around, maybe not a negative, more a something I would expect from a game that it doesn't have. The scenery and the towns are not very interactive. They're beautiful, pretty to look at, but you don't really feel like you can explore or find any sort of secrets. There's a few codex dotted around off the beaten track, but nothing to really make you want to go off the beaten track too much, because there isn't really any sort of open worldness to it. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. Linear games are cool, take you through the storyline, and I think this is what this is about. It wants you to hear this story, to play this story, and to get you involved that way. So there we go. The main character we've been playing with has just been killed. The mask, which is integral to the game, the masks that are worn, that disappears and vanishes into the ether when someone dies, and I think that's why that's showing the bright star there after his death. So there we go. It's an interesting game, really interesting. I've liked my first few hours with it, and I think you will too if you appreciate storyline, a beautifully crafted game, and you're not too fussed about fight systems. So I'll let you know how I get on with this, but hopefully you'll take the plunge and have a go on this as well.
www.gamesfreezer.eu